I'm Matthew Klein, and I am a full-time developer working at Idaho State University in Idaho, and am introducing DotSpatial. DotSpatial is our open source .NET framework that we use, a number of graduate students use, in various different projects that we've been working on that are largely and often funded by various grants. I want to tell you a little bit about the history of DotSpatial, and then we'll go into some demos, making this presentation a little bit different than the rest of them. I'll demonstrate how you can use this in 3 or 4 different ways. So first, it's free, it's licensed by the LGPL, which means feel free to use it. Please contribute back changes if you make them, but you can also create extensions to DotSpatial. I will give a few demonstrations of this, and those extensions can be open or closed source. Those can be free, or you can create your business model around selling those extensions if you like. And I'll give you some ideas on how you can get those extensions to users of DotSpatial. You can build it with your choice of tools. Most likely, we're going to use Visual Studio Professional in these demonstrations, and you're most likely going to have the best experience there, but you can use these other tools, and we have some documentation on the website that explain how to use some of them. One of the new things about DotSpatial, in the last year we have targeted the .NET 4 client profile. The client profile will install via Windows Update by default on Windows Vista machines and Windows 7 machines, and it's available as an optional install on Windows XP. So some people that had trouble earlier getting DotSpatial on their systems might find this makes that easier. And we don't support directly other operating systems other than Windows, but again, that's a project goal, and some people have made some effort to support those platforms. A little bit about the history of DotSpatial. In the year 2003, MapWindow 3 came out. It included an ActiveX component and a desktop application and a .NET-based plugin architecture. We learned that a lot of people wanted to use .NET and wouldn't necessarily have the C++ skill set that you need if you want to edit both the .NET-based kind of front end as well as the back-end ActiveX component. And so in the year 2010, a number of people got together, decided they'd create a 100% managed code .NET C# library, and they named it eventually DotSpatial. In 2011, additional modifications were made. It supported the managed extensibility framework that Carlos talked about a little bit earlier, and allowed more extensions and more extensibility. And in the last year, in 2012, an officially versioned and supported release was issued, as well as the MapWindow 6. So MapWindow 6.1 uses DotSpatial version 1, MapWindow 6.2, DotSpatial version 1.2. Well, that's enough of the history. So it has seen a little bit of light in various different projects that we've used at ISU, as well as a commercial project named GeoQ. We're, of course, always happy to see this being used commercially, because that means that those businesses that are making money off it are going to be able to contribute back and improve the project. So, on to the demos. In the first demo, I'm going to explain how you might add DotSpatial to an existing application. So, let's say that we have this existing application here. I'm in Visual Studio, I've already opened the project, and I just want to add a map. As long as I have the NuGet Package Manager installed, this is as simple as adding any other kind of reference. I'm online, and I'm going to search for DotSpatial, .controls. And there's a particular package that's set up to get people started easily. That's the .spatial.controls.sample. As I install this, it will install a number of dependencies. The package itself depends on .spatial.controls, which depends on a number of other packages. And the sample includes a form. The form basically has a map control docked to fill it. So if I've got my existing application, I just want to pull in a map. I don't necessarily even have to go to any other websites. If I've heard about mapping or I'm able to find it by searching, then I'll be able to come in here and get that package. As we can see, it has decided to fail and has not given us a specific reason. So what I will try is I'm going to use my local cache. It has the same files as what we've got online, but the connection might work a little bit better. We'll see if it can install things this way. It can't. It failed on a different reference. Well, in my preparations, I didn't run into that problem, so I'll just try the same thing again and see if I get different results. Well, that's kind of interesting. So I'm not actually sure what the problem is there, and I don't think I'm going to try to figure that out exactly. I'll just go create a new application and see if there's something weird going on here. We're just trying to demonstrate if you had a Windows application and you wanted to add a map to it. So we'll pretend like here's my application. Save the existing one as it closes. Doesn't have anything on this form, but you can, in this scenario, install the .spatial.controls.sample. When it finishes installing, it requires that I restart the form. Or close the design or reload the project. It will prompt me to do that, but that's because right now, NuGet doesn't support adding forms directly, and so we run a script to take care of things. So I'll click reload. At some point in the future, that might not be required. And now you'll see this map form has shown up over here. Map form's really simple, but because we cannot, as a NuGet package, we cannot add controls to the toolbox. If a user wanted this map control to show up on a different form in their application, they could come over here. I've hit Control-X to cut it. You could copy it as well and say paste it. So now I've pasted it into my existing application form 1. I've also, by virtue of adding that reference, I've ended up with a number of references to .spatial DLLs. And this form here with its map control I want to add just a sample layer to it. So I'll drag the layer over to the form and drop it on the form. And this is an image of a globe. So it tells me that there's no projection, which is correct. And then we can use this map control. I can zoom in and pan around and so forth. So that's just a simple way to get a map control into your application. And once you have that there, you can do many other things. So let's skip to the next demo. If you have questions about this, feel free to ask them at the end or towards the end. The next thing we're going to do is demonstrate creating an extension. So DotSpatial is designed so that you can take a number of different extensions and put them together and end up with a package that's the sum total of all those extensions. So how do you create an extension if you want to do that? Well, in this case, we'll create a new project. And again, just like we had that sample NuGet package that not only adds the references, but brings in a form, we have a DotSpatial template. If I went to the online templates, I could search for DotSpatial. I've got it installed, so I'll search for it here. And this is the project template designed to help me create an extension. So it's giving it a name, and I can, of course, change that if I'd like. Call it the Add Points project. And as the new project is being created, I'll end up with a number of references to those same NuGet packages that I'd get if I started from scratch, as well as an executable. So the template includes an executable so that when I create my extension, a DLL assembly, it can run that executable, which will load the extension so that I can see it in practice as soon as I hit F5 or click Build and Run. I'm also brought to this README that gives me a demonstration extension that I could use if I wanted to go through a quick tutorial. So here's the plugin file over here. I'll rename the plugin to Add Points plugin. And it's going to rename the class for me, which I want. So here's the new class. You can see it derives from extension. We'll come to that later. And it is by default going to create a menu item that says My Button caption. I'll just change this to say Add Points. And then when the button is clicked, this event will occur, which is the method that's here. So when the button is clicked, the user clicks the button. I want to do some logic. And what we'll do for this demonstration is after importing namespace, .spatial.data, we can create a feature set. and we'll use an overload of the constructor to bring in the topology feature type point. So we're creating basically a collection of points, which we're going to iterate over. We'll go through 100 times to create about 10,000 points, I guess. And then inside of this nested for loop, we're going to add to the points a new point that we'll create at this coordinate. So I also need to bring in the DotSpatial.topology namespace. Thought it was going to be a shortcut for me. It was a long cut. So here I add the points that I'm creating to the points collection. And then, after I have that whole collection of points, we add it to the map. So when we're creating an extension, we have access to a few different things like a progress bar, a dock manager if we want to add a new dock panel, the ribbon where we add this, or the ribbon or the menu, or the header control where we add this menu item, the simple action item. And we also have access to a map. So that's at app.map. We'll access the layers property and add the feature set points. So there's our button click of it. It should create about 10,000 points in a square. And if all works well, when we click this menu button here, it'll add those to the map as a layer. So again, it's telling me it doesn't have a projection. And I will zoom in a little bit so you can see the individual points. And they picked up light green color. So that's just a quick example of how can you create an extension. This particular extension is going to be located in the plugins folder. And so this is the file that I would distribute one way or another. One of those being on the DotSpatial feed. Or I could just email it to a friend if that's the way that I wanted to do that. So I'd like to show you another demo about wrapping your application in an extension. Say you have something like, maybe you have a really cool Sudoku game and you want that to be part of MapWindow. Or maybe you're using something like the SWMM that I've heard mentioned a few times, and it independently opens files and modifies the files, and you just want that to be available in our feed so that people can find your tool. Or any other application that you have. In this case, I understand that in Europe, Microsoft has a game they released with Windows that's about finding flowers. So you walk around the field and if you click on a flower, the game's over. But if you can mark all the flowers without accidentally clicking on them, then you win the game. This is basically that, except in America they call it Minesweeper. It's same dynamics though. So here's an application I found. It was open source somewhere on Codeplex. I think that's where I got it. And it's just a simple game. If I want this to become an extension to MapWindow, how do I do it? Well, we're going to need to do something very similar to what we have over here, where we're deriving from extension. On Activate, we add a menu item and so forth. One of the first steps would be adding references, or a NuGet reference, to the DotSpatial libraries. That's where we'll find the class extension. So I will add this reference here to DotSpatial.controls. And NuGet, because I'm going to guess that not all of you are familiar with NuGet. This is important. I'll come to this in a second. NuGet is a package manager. I understand it's similar to a gem in Ruby. It's a way of very easily adding these references to projects without having to go to a website, try to find them, download them, unblock them, install them, configure them, these packages tend to do all of that. So it's telling me here it couldn't install these packages because I have .NET 2. So the first thing that I'll do instead of adding these references is I'll go to Project Properties. So click Project menu and go to Minesweeper Properties, and I'll change the target framework. I need to make this either .NET Framework 4 or .NET Framework 4 Client Profile. And also, since I'm going to create this as an extension, we can go back to the Project Properties and select the output type to be class library, so it will output a DLL. Now I'm ready to add that NuGet package. Using NuGet packages also allows you to more easily update to the next version. So right now I'm installing the connection to the DotSpatial 1.2 version of these DLLs, of these packages. And in the future, when there are updates available, they'll appear, and I'll be able to make that upgrade in this same screen. We have the references. Now we need either a copy of this file or we can write it by hand. It's not too difficult to write it by hand, so let's see what I come up with here. I'll at least start it off by hand. So we'll add a new class. We can call this something like Minesweeper plugin. And then in this class, we're going to derive from extension. We need to add a using statement to use DotSpatial.controls, since that's where that extension class is. And I can't remember, I don't think we actually need to make the class public, but I'll make it public just as part of the convention to say that it's going to be used other places. And we can override a number of different methods. So previously we overrode the activate, or the activate method and the deactivate. If the extension was deactivated while the application was running, this method would be, since it's overridden, it would be executed. So we'll override activate over here in a very similar way, and we'll create a button click event, or you can name it anything else, that will show our Minesweeper game when the user needs to take a break. They can run this. So the way this code would look, why don't I also add a using statement to DotSpatial.controls.header, would be form, actually Minesweeper form. And then we'll just show that form. Change the name of the menu item to something like break. And I'll build this application. Of course, we can't run it directly at this point because it's just a DLL. So I need to browse to the location of it. And this is the DLL here that we need, minesweeper.dll. And we'll drop that into, we could drop it to the same place as our previous project. I'll show you here. We'll drop it into this plugins folder. Then we can execute that executable that came that will automatically load those extensions. So we see add points, that will show us the points on the map, and take a break, which is our little Minesweeper unit. And I hit a mine on the first click. So that's a quick demonstration of how, if you have already written your application and you feel like it applies to the spatial community, you just want to make it a plugin, that's the beginning step as to how you can get started adding that extension. Of course, you might want to do a little bit more, like add some of your data as a layer to the map, or show some progress while it's doing processing. But that's the way that you can get started. We took our project, we added references to DotSpatial libraries, and then we created a plugin by deriving from the extension. So our last demo is going to be kind of in response to some questions I heard, or some things that were brought up. What if my users don't want a full GIS? They just want something simple. How can I do that? And one of the things that we've tried to enable is users or programmers to create an application simply by composing different extensions, just picking the ones that they want. So on my desktop I have the default installation of what we call demo map. It's kind of like MapWindow 6. It has a certain set of extensions that come with it. It's got some like this little demo plugin. Well, that's not really one you'd want to release in the application if you're trying to create a simplified user experience. And there are all these others as well. So these plugins or extensions, I'm referring to these as by the same name, are all inside of one of 3 different directories. And one of those is application extensions. We intend for that to be used by things that you want to appear for the user. The user's not going to be able to disable them. They're just going to become part of their application. And this folder here as well, where they're treated essentially the same as the others, but the user can go in and uncheck them if they want to temporarily disable them. So this is where many of those buttons and other features are. They're in different extensions here. The ones that are left are things like menu bar that has a default set of buttons, table editor that adds a button to bring up an attribute table editor, and extension manager and an abound form. So say I don't want the abound one anymore and I want to just delete all of these. Now when I run demo map, I'm going to see a very simplified experience. I just see these buttons here, and it looks like I have a legend over here and a few things on the file menu. So I can pick and choose very much what extensions I want. And if I need help finding extensions, I'll use the extension manager. Here I can see the extensions that are currently activated. So there are 2 extensions, one of which is showing me coordinates in the bottom right-hand corner. And other things like tools and data providers, Google could appear here. And on the online tab, I see all of these extensions that are available from an online feed. So we also talked a little bit about our use of root tile and the web map control. A user that wants to find this extension can do so really easily here. And if they want to search as well, they can find it by name. I'm able to see a description of what this extension does and select it and install it. So the extension manager is designed to help you find extensions, and the framework is designed to let you enable whichever extensions you feel work best in your application. As well as if you'd like to, you can include the extension manager so your users can find extensions as well. So we hope you find some value in DotSpatial and that you feel comfortable building your .NET application on DotSpatial.